Hello, friends. I guess it is lighting up and ready to go. It always takes a minute. It seems lately it takes a little bit longer to populate than it has in the past. Oh, there's a few people. Hello, Catherine. Today is the 17th. -1. Holy cow. Hi, Ruth. Good to see you. It's cold outside. We got a big snowstorm. I'm sure a lot of you are in an area that was probably affected by the snowstorm. We didn't get a huge amount of snow, enough so that we were out shoveling. Hello, Paul. But I don't know. These spring winter storms are always kind of fun. They come, the snowflakes are big and heavy. It's relatively warm, although it's cold right now, -1. But usually that's an opportunity to go out and get your last little day of winter fun in with the kids. And speaking of my kids, they're currently on spring break right now. They're off the rest of the week, and I'll be taking the next couple days off, actually. Hello, Ash. And I'll be taking them to just a hotel with a water park in it. Well, it's not all that expensive. It's like $200, and you get to stay a night, and you get 2 days, you get to play in the park. So I thought it was a pretty decent deal. It's one of those little escapes you can do um, if you just happen to have a couple days. And that's the kind of stuff that you remember. You remember just taking the kids. Unfortunately, my wife is in the school district in the neighboring town. So her spring break doesn't line up with ours. She'll have a week off coming up soon. Maybe I should take some time off again when she's there. I'm telling you, folks, the way things are. Hello, what is it? Die. The way things are going, it's so exhausting. And also, I just want to say I'm a little bit groggy today. Yesterday. I had my second shingles vaccine in the morning. That was at 8:30. I don't feel terrible, but just a little bit. You kind of feel like you have the flu. You get the aches and pains. But today, I don't know if you guys, carrying on from the conversation I had yesterday with Zuri Stevens, I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch that. Zuri's just this wonderful writer and content creator. I've met her years ago on Medium. I always really appreciated her work and her writing and her compassion. And I always say one of the silver linings of this just horrible year dealing with this criminal regime, the cruelty of it, the cruelty of all conservatives, the cruelty of all Republicans, is that it has given me the incentive to reach out and meet a lot of wonderful people like Zuri, all the people. I'll be talking with Nick Parra later today, and Will Fullwood, and Margaret Williams. Hi, Shelley, Joanne. So I think we do have to continue to find that silver lining. There's days when I'm just exhausted. I know Shane Urek, this last couple weeks, I think I just kind of, uh, a week ago, it was sort of like stuff was falling off my plate. And now it's just sort of like, okay, just can't do it. You just have to deliberately take more days off because of all the stuff that's going on. And we have to constantly be mindful that, we have our families, we have our loved ones. And this is our life, even though we are beneath the heel of this cruel tyrant who's doing nothing but fleecing us, robbing us blind, we still have to live our lives, and it's a strange thing, isn't it? I mean, they have us right up against the wall. The amount of money that they steal, the $1 trillion they spend on the military every year, all these hundreds of billions that go to the police, that go to ICE. They spend all that money just to hurt us. And we just sit here taking it. We sit here carrying on. There's never anybody there to ensure your house is, acceptable. We've got kids living in. Good morning, Laura. We got yep, keep your chin up. Sorry, I guess I'm a little bit of a downer today. I don't mean to be a downer. I guess maybe I'll pivot because it's like, yes, we should recognize, and a big part of being at the center of an abusive and exploitative system is that we have to tell ourselves that we're okay. Oh, it's fine, it's not that bad, even though things continue to pile up and pile up. And I think I just want to give people permission to just start saying, that this is abuse. This is not acceptable. Everybody's just still so quiet. I wrote my article the other day, and I knew I was going to get a couple reactions like this, but I know, yeah, we're all down, but we're together, and go watch that interview I did, that discussion. I guess it's not an interview. That discussion I had with Suri Stevens, and I hope you feel empowered by it. Because in this last year, I've really, I have all these talking points that keep coming up as I do these talks, and I run them by people and see how they respond, and it's just sort of like practicing. Thank you for the hearts. The hearts really help. Um, you run by these talking points with people, you get their response to them, but then you continually you rearrange them and you see different things then, and all these just kind of facts. Hello, Joanna. And I was like, this morning somebody got upset, and I was just like, we gave the Democrats the power to stop this in the 2020 election. In 2021, they had the presidency, they had the House, they had the Senate. And somebody this morning is like, well, they haven't had control of those things since 2008. It's like, no, they had control in 2021, and they could have stopped this. And all that pressure, to just kind of submit to these systems of abuse that surround us. But I wrote that article the other day about how we just have to start accepting that Americans are bad people. I think we just have to say that, because I keep thinking, I keep reflecting. We dropped these bombs and killed all those kids in Iran, little kids, all murdered by this cruel government. And where's the outrage? I guess as damning as the fact that they murdered all those kids is the fact that everybody just remains silent. People should be. And I felt the same just hit when they did that in Venezuela. They killed all those people in Venezuela. And this is a nation that, it sits there being proud of its military might, which itself is a sickness. Nations should never be proud of its military might. And these are the kind of things we have to start recognizing. We have to think, and we have to give ourselves permission to speak these words. What does it say? And they don't care about those kids. Outrageous. I mean, not only does the government not care, and the people that killed them, they don't care, but the press doesn't care, and all the people don't care. And you go to the grocery store and people aren't, they're buying things and they're going through their day. And they're just not recognizing they live in a country that just blew up a whole bunch of little kids. And what I'm saying is, we have this whole indoctrinating message. Oh, you have to have reverence for the military and all the money they spend and all this. And it's like, you know what? It's not enough to be angry when the bombs drop on children. Our anger needs, and we're not even there. I mean, that's the part that's really upsetting. We're not even there where we're angry when kids get killed. We need to get to a point where we're angry just because they built the bomb. Just because they built the bombs in the first place. And all these lies that they tell, I looked up the numbers once. I should go find this article. I wrote an article for it. But, on average, everybody always talks about international terrorism. And, what do we lose every year on that? 5 American? I looked up the number, like 5 American lives. And that's most years there are none. There's just like, every 10 years or so, there's some sort of an event, and then you spread that off over an average. But terrorism is not a thing. And people just keep saying it. And then people will say, well, it's not a thing because we spend all this money on the military. The military isn't really there to serve the people. The military is there to protect the oil interests. So it's a massive subsidy of the oil industry to protect all these rich jerks. And oil itself, if you look into the history of the oil industry, it kind of rose up after the end of the Civil War. The white supremacists thought that this was God's way of restoring the glory of the South. And that's what the oil industry was then, and that's what it remains to this day. But I wrote my article about, let's just start saying it. I mean, I think we do just have to recognize accountability. You have to recognize when you have a problem. 3 years ago, I quit drinking, and it wasn't because I was out, having DUIs and everything. I just thought I can be a better person if I don't drink. And it was only after I quit drinking that I realized kind of what I had been imposing on my family prior to that choice. You don't really see it until you make that decision. I'm going to change things. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to do things differently. And it starts with, that strong decision. I'm going to be better. I'm going to recognize the things I've done in the past aren't good enough. And I'm going, and MJ says the military sure isn't protecting us now. I mean, the military is going from city to city shooting people. At some point they have to stop, and they keep saying, the people keep appealing to the generals that have been in business for a long time, and they know the rules of war, and they know what's unethical. All these generals, I mean, every single general, they've had their whole career and legacy tarnished. You're part of a military that blew up a school full of kids. Forever. That's you forever. You know? I'm not gonna forget. The families of the kids aren't gonna forget. The world's not gonna forget. And we need to have talks like this. And so much of our society just brushes things off. Like I said, when I decided to quit drinking, quit. And then once you've made that decision, move forward, it's easier to look back and say, you know what, I wasn't good enough. And so I wrote this article about it's time to recognize Americans are not good people. I mean, we're just not good people. Because look at our reaction to 170 kids getting blown up. We tolerate it. We're not angry. And that makes us not good. And somebody puts, well, that's a huge generalization. It's like, look, it's not about you. I realize that stings a little bit to be told you're not a good person. It stings. But unless you recognize that and accept the truth of it, you're complicit in the murder and the abuse and the rape and the torture of little kids. And that's what's got to stop. And so I think I titled this today something about how conservative ideology is just child abuse. You know, it's a Republican ideology is an ideology of child abuse. And we're pressured, you know, to allow it and to endure it and to tolerate it. Oh, you have to think about things from their point of view. Okay, I want to turn that on its head and say, think about things from my point of view now. We always say I have to think about things from their point of view. So I'm appealing to them to think about things from my point of view. So that's fair because I'm using their language. And my point of view is that the entire Republican Party is a bunch of child abusers. And it's not just related to Epstein, although that's kind of the culmination of it, but it's thing after thing. I got a little sun in there. Have been wondering about the effects from the constant violent imagery in our media entertainment. Studies show it desensitizes us. That's interesting. I would say it's more than just the images. I would say it's the tolerance of cruel ideologies, you know. And I'll start with an example. If somebody comes into a room, they don't come in and say, I'm going to rape all your kids. You know, that's what I believe. People don't do that. Instead, what they do is say they have to present themselves. This is just the deceit, the liars. They present themselves as, well, I'm a champion of the unborn, for example. I'm worried about that child. Who is the one who speaks for that child inside of you? And so they present themselves as heroic. And then starting with that, then they repeal your own right to have control over your body. And that's the first step, one of the major first steps to raping somebody, is depriving them of their right to bodily autonomy. I mean, we really do have to get to this point where we understand how the pro-life movement is a movement of child rape, depriving people, and it's also the consequence of repealing Roe versus Wade was the repeal of the unenumerated right to privacy, which is why they're able to create the surveillance state. So it's two birds with one stone for evil people, frankly, and just the levels upon levels. I mean, I think it desensitizes us. I mean, we talk about the media. Yeah, I mean, and it's a problem to watch, you know, every movie is a variation of John Wick where somebody's just endless amounts of people getting shot in the head. That's not good for us. But even bigger than that is just the tolerance of allowing churches to be bigoted against women and to not allow women into positions of power. That's a child rape position. If you deprive women of authority or power in any instance, all that does is enable and empower the pedophiles. And that structure is very clearly in place. I was, yesterday with the kids, we watched the film Sinners. We saw that it was, I'd been waiting to watch it. Yesterday was a good opportunity. Everybody was at home. We're just kind of chilling. We'd gone out and done some shoveling. And one of the things about it that it struck me as interesting, a lot struck me as interesting. It's an interesting movie. But one of the things that struck me as interesting is there's a scene with these vampires. So they have this repeated scene. And the vampires come to the house. And the people inside the house, all they have to do is not offer them entry. And they're protected. And so, I mean, it's so basic, right? Such a basic, simple thing. And we all have that power. And so the vampires learn how to be charming. They learn how to stand there. They learned how to exert pressure. They do everything they can to get inside, to get somebody to say, well, come on in, and it just seems like such a simple thing. And it occurred to me how that really does kind of represent conservative child abuse ideology and Republican child abuse ideology in a nutshell. Because we all know that we have a right to say, look, separation of church and state. Don't talk about God at school. It's like, well, surely in the Pledge of Allegiance we can add under God. Surely we can do that. And they pressure and pressure and pressure, and then we capitulate. And now they got their foot in the door. The vampires have their foot in the door. And it's just we need to get to this point, America. Americans have to do this. And when people get, when I'm just like, Americans are just not good people, and people say they wince, well, that makes me feel bad about myself. It's like, okay, yeah, see, that's the same white supremacy argument. You're thinking about yourself and your own feelings instead of doing whatever you can and having the courage to adopt a mentality and a mindset to stop child abuse. And so much of what conservatives believe, so much of what Republicans believe, it's all complex. This mechanism is extremely complex, but it only serves one purpose, and that purpose is to make you submit to their abuse. It's a stunning thing. I have a story I wanted to tell, and feel free to, I hit those hearts, people. I love the hearts, and feel free to be ready in a minute to go with your comments and your questions. I'm here to answer your questions. But I want to tell this one last story. After my dad got divorced, he left, and he left our family. I remember he always wanted to have conversations, and that was kind of his. But he was always like, his favorite place to have a conversation was driving, where he was, and it's just like that image of control. He is behind the wheel, he is controlling the vehicle, and so then just kind of for self-preservation, I'm not really allowed to say anything that might upset him, right? Because he's in control. He has that power over both our lives. He has both of our lives in at his fingertips. He could just steer us into a ditch or something. So I remember, though, we were pulling into our house, so the drive was pretty much over. We weren't going at highway speeds. And he was just on again, just, it's one of those, look at what your mother is making me do, which is just another line of cruelty, a line of white supremacy, a line of abuse. The things that conservatives always say is they justify their patriarchal, cruel authority, where they feel entitled to abuse and rape and violate little kids and murder them with bombs paid for by our tax dollars. So we pulled into the driveway, and I was talking to my dad, and I just mentioned, it's like, well, just consider, what clearly is the problem? Look at your brothers and sisters, and they'd all been divorced. And then look at my mom's family, and like they were all still together. And I'm like, that seems to be evidence that there's some degree of problem on your side. It's just a comment, and I actually said it not thinking that it would convince him. I was deliberately probably trying. I didn't realize consciously that I was deliberately trying to provoke him, but that's what I was doing. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we put ourselves in situations where you create a scenario where some inevitable consequence happens. When we need change, sometimes we're not consciously aware that's what we're pushing for. But he became so angry. And I just remember the look on his face, just the rage, it was just roiling, and he tightened his grip on the steering wheel, and we weren't going that fast. And it was just, the indication was clear. How dare you comment on the prohibited, idea? How dare you examine this idea that's outside of the boundaries I choose to recognize? And that is how conservatives think. They become enraged. I've been talking more and more about this idea of the bizarro boundaries. In a healthy relationship, we have healthy boundaries. You respect each other. You have empathy. You're willing to make changes. You have to protect yourself. But at the same time, there's all these things that you empower others. Well, there's this there's this perversion of boundaries that white supremacists believe. And in their minds, that's the thing that makes this really complicated, is in their minds, they are doing right. Because they've convinced themselves with this contorted worldview. But the problem is it's an incomplete circuit, and it has these gaps in it, these long gaps that you can just walk through if you want to, because they don't logically make any sense. But they refuse to examine those gaps. They refuse to examine certain ideas. And this was always the thing that with my dad was my issue, because for a lot of my life, I just accepted the boundaries that he had presented to us. This was the world, he said, and that was my dad. So what was I supposed to do? I was powerless, and I needed him to survive. This is the world. These are the boundaries. These are the things you must never, of this we do not speak, these places. Okay. Take his word for it because you're young and you don't have power. And it's one of those things where through that they coerce you into adopting their ideology of cruelty. And I've had to really wrestle with that, because it's a thing of you look back and you say, well, why did I think this? And you feel guilty about some of the ways you treated people and some of the assumptions you made. And it took me a long time, to be respectful, just because being snarky is the conservative way. We've seen more and more of that, where they like to take it upon themselves, permission to say any cruel thing that they want. But if you say something back to them, they start to cry, they squeal. And my dad was an example of that too, where it's just sort of like, you have a right to say anything to me, to belittle me in any way possible. But if I say anything that so much as touches on a nerve for you, you flip out. And those are the things. That's another one of those spaces you're not allowed to examine. Well, we won't. And they give you that, and I call it Scott Jennings resting white supremacy face, where they're just like, and it's like we know that's already. They pass over and they use it. Their physicality, their pressure of their authority. They manage to push you past these moments. But if I do that, this will happen. And again, that's the example of the vampires. Well, if I let you in, you'll come in and kill me. Come on now. We're not talking about that. We're talking about these other things. Why do you have to keep going back to what's wrong with you? Why are you going back to that? That's been established. Then you let them in and they kill you. Yeah, arresting. That's why Scott Jennings. But I look for it. I mean, I say that and it's kind of a funny thing to say. But look for people who do that, or they are dismissive. You're saying something that's completely reasonable, and they become desperate. And we are all indoctrinated to kind of, when somebody starts mocking you, when you say something just really basic. And again, my comment with my dad, well, gee, everybody in your family is divorced. Everybody in my mom's family is still together. Maybe the divorce problem is something inherent to your growing up. Should we explore that a little bit? Absolutely not. I mean, it's already established, and he's trying to maintain this narrative, this bizarro boundaries narrative. And I just want you guys to consider that. And this is why when I say the United States is filled with bad people, because we tolerate that. We are all more inclined to live within these bizarro boundaries that enable evil, which enable an obscene military that drops bombs on little kids. And we are all complicit in that. I mean, you just have to accept that. If you ever paid taxes, some part of those taxes went to pay for those bombs that killed little kids. Sue says, Cheney pushing for right to torture people in prison. Our U.S. culture is violent. Well, yeah, it's white supremacy culture that's violent. The United States culture is the culture of white supremacy. It's that whole bizarro boundaries of manifest destiny and supremacy. They say American exceptionalism. They might as well say American supremacy. This is a white supremacy nation. And we as individuals, my friends, you have to push back on that. You have to push back hard on it. And we have just so many levels in our society. It's like we just tolerate representatives using their office to become obscenely rich. Like, good for them. It's like, oh, help me get elected. I'll help you. Give me $20. Give me $20. Give me $20. Then they get into office, and the next thing you know, they got a portfolio worth $200 million, and they don't use any of that money. They get the Treasury, in control of the Treasury of the United States, and they use all that money from our hard work to enrich themselves. And that's the whole government, and we sit here tolerating it. But I mean, like Sue said, Cheney pushing for torturing people. And I mean, there's so much human torture that's normalized as part of American ideology. Depriving women of the right to reproductive health care is torture. So every single woman in the United States is vulnerable to being tortured by conservative ideology. It's abuse. And this idea but just consider, having said that, consider how much pressure there is when people are like, well, we have to understand things from their point of view. People don't, if you call somebody a racist, that doesn't stop them. It only makes them double down. They become more entrenched in their ways. All that is bizarro boundaries. All that is that don't even look in these potential areas where, we can just escape and walk and be free and have a society that actually works for us, a society for the benefit of all. And just that constant reprogramming that we have to do for ourselves. It's I want people to reflect on it and reflect on that impulse to say, well, that's an overgeneralization or that's unfair or that's too broad of a statement. They defer, oh, okay, let me say this. MJ says, my mother is a Democrat and raised me to keep my mouth shut about politics. Yeah, and that's part of it. That's our conditioning. We need to be speaking out. Anytime I'd call someone out, she'd scold me for causing their bad reaction. Look at what your mother is making me do, which is the line of all abusive husbands. And we have to recognize. I keep running into this thing. Like I said, the degree to which we have to recalibrate our thinking is enormous. This idea of we're not even at the point where we call out the government for murdering kids. We're not even there. We need to get even further back to the point where we call out the government for building bombs in the first place. That's how far we have to go. That's how far we have to go to the left to make things better. There's another story I was going to tell, but it kind of slipped my mind. Hey, this is the consequence of me having taken my vaccine the other day. It'll probably come back as I keep talking here. But I'm just a little bit groggy. But I mean, just empowering people to make those radical changes. I remember what it was. I don't know if it's been a couple days since I've been on here. I think I was off Friday for whatever reason. I'll be off the next 2 days. So I've missed seeing you guys and I've missed reading these comments. I really do enjoy and keep your comments coming. I enjoy pausing to read those. But I wanted to say that the last time I talked, there was some guy named Michael in the chat, and he was saying things, and it was really interesting because the way I look at it, it's like, okay, let me just draw a diagram. Our thinking is, it's like we have this, our thinking is down in this rut, and our job in life is to remove the rut and get up here. But this trench exists, and climbing up always takes an effort. And once you're on top, it's easy to be pulled back in, right? Don't have anything weird written on here, I hope. And so that is why white supremacy ideology is so easy to maintain. Because they know all they have to do. They have gravity working for them. They have that trench. And we've all been conditioned and constantly indoctrinated from our first days. We have this trench in our brain, and we scurry along the bottom of it like rats, frankly. And being at the bottom of the trench is what prevents us from saying, gee, we shouldn't use our military to blow up 100, was it 200 kids now? I mean, the death count always seems to rise. 200 innocent lives taken. And, but because we have that trench established in our brain, we just stay down there scurrying at the bottom like rats. And if you try to climb out, and I constantly, this is my goal in life. This is my whole purpose of existence, is to not only climb out, but to help others to climb out and have a fellowship on top so we can establish a new route for this nation and by extension, all of humanity. One that is, you normalize compassion and decency and accountability rather than this cruelty and abuse that we are currently stuck with. And so that guy Michael was in the chat the other day, and I was making these statements, and one of the things, hey, Anthony, good to see you. One of the things that Michael was saying, and he says, he in the comments, he put out, well, don't throw the baby away with the bathwater, because I was making my comments about how pro-life is an ideology of violence against women. And it's just like in all cases, we need to say that. And he was of this group where he says, well, we need, certain groups we have to be tolerant because we need those votes in order to win. And it's like, if you are making deals with evil people in order to win office, all you're putting into office is more evil. And so we have to be firm with our integrity. And, but he said, he's like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm just like, stop. I'm not going to talk anymore. It's like, we're talking about very, very serious issues. And now you're losing this colloquial phrase that's just designed to distract me, to divert me from this important point I wanted to make, because I have to do the math myself. Well, what does he mean by baby? What does he mean by bathwater? It's not clear. He doesn't meet a rhetorical standard. And that is always true of systems of abuse. They do not know peer review. They can't define the terms they use. We saw that with the interviews with the DEI or the Doge jerks who couldn't define DEI and yet were firing people and stealing funds for that reason. And you all have to get to this point because I'm sure from the outside looking in, it seemed like I was being rude. But I said, look, it's actually rude for somebody to use a phrase like don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because that sounds, I mean, it has this, people have heard that before. It's like, oh, that's true. That's been said for 100 years. You need to be offended when people say something like that in a serious conversation because that's not a serious statement. If we're going to talk about issues like stop kids from being raped, I don't want you to use like colloquial fucking phrases, you know? I need you to be clear about what your position is because the thing that white supremacists do is they camouflage their evil. Like I said, they don't come into a room and say, I'm going to rape your kids. They come in and say, I am a defender of the unborn. And they steal your bodily autonomy that way. All right, I'm going to go through this here. MJ said, you were not being rude. You rightfully called him out. That's good. I'm glad that you had that perception. I didn't know how people were going to think about it. And it's kind of because he sent me a couple of messages when I was done. And I eventually had to block the guy. Because he made accusations of things I didn't say. I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. Yeah, it didn't have any meaning. It never does. I mean, and that's like, you have to be, if you're talking about serious issues, you got to be serious. Good morning, Lynn. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I still don't understand what he meant by that. It's called a thought-terminating cliche. And this is one of the fundamental building blocks of conservatives. They make a statement that is actually just a nonsense statement. And it's meant to divert a conversation that is potentially productive. So they show up on my blogs all the time. I think they're switching to the tactic of just suppressing my content now. Yeah, it's an asinine. Thank you guys. You guys are wonderful. I appreciate you guys so much. All right, I got back up. So now I'm back down to the bottom. Yeah, keep coming with those comments. I really do appreciate your comments, folks. It's wonderful. And I saw that Anthony was here. I don't know if he's still around, but he's been writing these brilliant things. And he's approaching and this is what I really appreciate about Substack. Anthony is approaching the same problem as I am, but from a different angle. And I see these overlaps with how we think. And often he'll put things in a way and I'm like, oh, and it just kind of opens my eyes a little bit. It's like maybe an epiphany I would have had in 3 months. And then okay, Anthony said it now. So I do really, really appreciate that, this think tank. And I'll be talking again with another congressional candidate. That's at 2:00 p.m. That Robert People I talked to last week was fantastic. And he was so, I like it when people say to me, it's like, well, you should run for office. That's really nice. I really appreciate when people say that. But I also know too, my personality isn't for that. This guy Robert People had this temperament that was just perfect. He was so respectful and courteous, and he was listening to the things I said. And he was so careful with his words because he was like, I want to say, and he was like, how about this word? He's like, not quite that. He was like being really, he's like, I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to say this. And I just really appreciated talking to him. So if you get a chance to watch that interview with Robert People, just share it too. I mean, these interviews with these progressive candidates are super important. Because we got to get the money out of government. We need a whole generation. And those progressive candidates are the ones you can talk to them and kind of help unlock their minds. Because everybody's so indoctrinated with this enablement of abuse ideology. And like whoever was who said that before, MJ said before, we're all told that if we point out the things that make Republicans flip out, we are somehow the bad guys. Them flipping out is where the problem is. So don't censor yourself. Speak the truth, everybody. Please do. Didn't have any meaning. Okay, let me roll down. Lynn said, I'm not at all offended by what you said. Thank you, Lynn. And it's just really, really important. It's really important when you can state facts and people. It's like my reaction to me, your reaction to me stating a fact isn't my problem. You know, this is a fact. If you're really bothered by that fact, let's talk about why you're bothered by it. But people, so many times the Republicans and conservatives, they jump to this. Well, look at how angry you made me by saying that. It's like, no, you're the one who got angry. All I did was state a fact. You know, why are you angry? And it's because they have this bizarro boundaries in their mind thing. They've indoctrinated themselves to think that they're entitled to have other people respect, even though it's all complete nonsense and it leads to child abuse. And that's pretty much it. All right. Yeah, cliches have no meaning. That thought terminating cliche. They use it to disrupt potentially productive conversations. And that's how they control how we think. I mean, it's really malicious. I mean, it seems like it's not a big deal. Well, you know, you can't cut an end of, you can't cut one end off a blanket and make it longer by sewing it to the other end. It's like, what are you saying? You didn't say anything. All right. Lynn says, I cannot believe 47 is still in power. I'm 60 and have never seen anything like this in my life. And I always appreciate those perspectives. I'm 51 now. I haven't seen anything like it either. It's just like the level of corruption that has always been in our government. What's really scary, I think, is what this has shown is how evil just the American public is, because they are tolerating this. They are sitting passively. They are entitled and enabled, and they have enabled this. We should have stood up a long time ago. We should have had these conversations a long time ago. But, and I'm as guilty as anybody else. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm better than anybody else. I'm just as guilty. I, too, like everybody else, just wanted to get Kamala in. But, I mean, part of that impulse is because our backs are against the wall economically all the time anyway. And so did we have time before to spend all this energy just examining and recognizing the truth of the corruption in this American society, this corrupt society? We didn't have that energy before by design. And we don't have it now, but what else can we do? Because it can't be ignored anymore. They're raping kids. They're protecting child rapists. They're blowing up schools. They're rounding people up and shooting them in the street. There's literally, the only thing that could be worse is if they drop a nuclear bomb on a U.S. city. And I don't know if that's, that's not outside the realm of possibility with these people that are in charge. They are so corrupt. Okay. Here's Anthony. He says, when I listen to all these progressive, you give me hope. Those progressive candidates are fantastic. I'm looking forward to scheduling a talk with you. And this is another one of those things. I keep seeing Anthony's name pop up, and every time he says something, it's brilliant. And I know he's doing really good work. So I'm looking forward to having this talk. I got to talk with This Will Hold Yet too. And just like a little bit better. Anthony said something great the other day about just like the Democrats just need to start speaking truth. Just speak truth. But like MJ said before, the general public is indoctrinated to believe when a person speaks truth and it offends a certain group, we shouldn't speak truth. And we just submit to that level of censorship. And again, that's the vampires knocking at our door again, saying, all you have to do is let me in. Just comply with this one little thing, and then all the problems will be solved. And then you comply, and everything becomes exponentially worse. And that's the mechanism of what we're dealing with now in a nutshell. And I'll continue talking about. We'll get there. Nikki says, I've been trying to send you my picture with. Oh, you got one. Awesome. You can't send it in as a direct message. You could put it and tag me in it. Just send it as a note. But I'm glad you got to meet Jasmine Crockett. That's fantastic. I wonder what's she doing, Nikki? What's her next for her? I hope there's something, because we need her. We need her enormously. MJ says, I've been interviewing lately, and a couple people told me that I should be careful about posting my opinions on social media. Fuck that. If a company doesn't want me because I advocate for human rights, then I don't want to work for them. And that's another thing. That's another reason why I post so much. And I know, and I'd rather be writing it 3 times a day. Here it's usually 1, sometimes no, it's usually 2. So I've got like 5 posts going out every day, and but I do this full time, so I do have the privilege of just talking constantly, flood the zone with messages of reason and kindness. But part of it is because a lot of people do. Like my wife works in a school district; she's not allowed to speak her mind, really. And that, too, is unacceptable. We should be allowed. Have you ever noticed that rational, accomplished people with degrees, people with achievement, the social pressure is for them to hold their tongue. But the ignorant are allowed to speak to their heart's content. They're allowed to talk and talk and talk. And they influence the general public because our media is a form of education, and it's propaganda. The information that you get that's free is not good information a lot of the time. And we need to transform that. There's endless amounts of money that goes to propagandizing the general public. All these radio stations that tell nothing but lies. And that's why it's so important. And I appreciate all you guys so much for being here. Just share these things. And this is what I'm trying to do. Just kind of try to match that with a little bit of a counterpoint. But there is no counterpoint whatsoever because it's already been determined in American society. Within that bizarro boundaries, like I said, the things I talk about are like, way out here outside. And so people are just, when they've got that rut thinking, they're down here in the trench. And just by virtue of the fact that they're hearing me speak, they assume I'm doing something wrong because I'm outside of that bizarro boundaries they've been taught to believe and never question. And those bizarro boundaries are the cause of all their misery. Yeah. Suo says, I've seen two things reporting that fundamentalist. Oh, okay. Yeah, we got to be careful. Some of that stuff, I don't like when we start attacking. I mean, you got to be careful with the stories that are being sent out. So much is designed to divide. We have to be really careful because we don't want to make this into attacking people based on their religion. And it's so easy to make that pivot where they, because there's already like we the fascists within our society always want to leverage anti-Semitism. The Nazis still want to do that, but at the same time, what's going on? We have the cruel leader in Israel who is committing genocide. You have to make your focus on the cruelty of that leader, the leaders who are making those choices, and not of the people that are trapped beneath the power of that person. And those people too, the same criticism as that I have of the United States. The people here need to respond, and we have to end the bombs dropping on schools. And then, but we also have to know, it's like we have those comments about we have to be careful about the division. So this is the complexity of things that always is that is always at work. Did you see Waj and Joy Reid today? I did not see that. I'll have to look for that, Nikki. Make sure I get that link. Lynn says, I'm so worried about the pregnant teens in ICE. Yeah. I'm so worried about the pregnant teens in ICE custody with no oversight to their care. Some becoming pregnant while in ICE custody. I mean, these concentration camps where little kids are being raped. And then, I mean, it's just the atrocities going on right now. It's difficult to imagine. And I guess we're going to have, over the next 10 years or 20 years, probably the rest of our lives, there will be exposition about all the atrocities that were committed right now that are going on right this minute. You're alive in this moment. You have the ability to do something about it. And there's plenty of, completely law-abiding, peaceful things. Violence is the tool of the radical right. It is not our tool. And we have to protect the kids. We can't allow, but I mean, this government, this idea that we're not supposed to speak out, we're not supposed to have these criticisms when we have a pedophile government that has enabled child abusers and given them hundreds of billions of dollars. And there's always just enough Democrats who defect and vote to allow these Republican cruelty bills to go through. All those things need to be said. And I realize, it's like the complexity of things where people, and I was just kind of doing it before when it's just like, let's not make this a religious war. We have to, it's a war of ideology, the ideology of cruelty. We have to be really discerning and discriminating in our statements, because the one thing, the cruelty of the conservatives and the Republicans and white supremacists is that they're able to leverage imprecise statements and create division amongst people that should be our allies. So that's something we have to be very careful about. MJ says we need to be proactive, not just reactive. Yeah. Plenty of people saw all of this coming a long time ago. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I reflect on that a lot, because in my mind, I was doing everything I could. I realized there's more I could have done, but I think too, we didn't have a full understanding of the corruption that was out there. I mean, I never believed, when they were talking about Pizzagate, and it's like, okay, well, because they were saying, they were talking then about kids getting eaten and stuff. And you're just like, okay, that seems extreme. And then you read the Epstein files and you find out that's always been the case. So now we're in that moment of, but I mean, I think that's what I was talking about before. We have that set of boundaries in our minds that is indoctrinated in. And there's all these kind of fuzzy areas. We're just not allowed to examine and explore that more. And we have to just force ourselves to do that. I was watching with my kids an episode of the X-Files the other day. And it was kind of interesting how there was a scene, they were interviewing this guy, and the story, there's the Fox Mulder is the guy who believes in aliens and everything. And they were interviewing this guy on a lie detector test. And the guy passed the lie detector test, but Mulder had put a couple questions in there. One of them was, are you 130 years old? And he actually failed that question. Like the guy, because he says no, but he failed. But they're just like, well, that was just a test question, because clearly he can't be 130 years old. And this in the story, he actually was 130 years old. And that's just an example of how we fool ourselves. You've just seen the evidence, of something extreme, But because you've already kind of established in your mind that you don't think that can be possible or that can be true, you just deny that evidence. And we live like that. We've seen the evidence. I did the example the other day. I had my car broke down. It was, the heater wasn't working. I checked the coolant. The coolant was spoiled. I saw, the oil had mixed in with the coolant. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be a lot to fix. Car had 226,000 miles on it. And it was just one of those things like, how much is this going to cost to fix? What's the value of the car? So then I started, it's like, once I made the decision, like, this car is no longer worth it. What else is wrong with it? I'm like, well, the back hatch didn't open. You couldn't open that up. The dashboard light was broken. You couldn't see how fast I didn't drive it at night. The window wasn't rolling down anymore. The seals around the door were broken. I mean, it was just odd. And the gas cap lid just had broken off. So it's like, once you have that just kind of defining moment, where you stop thinking everything is fine, then you're like, oh, look at all the other evidence I had that showed that this was time for a new car. Why did I disregard all this? And it's because we get into that rut in our thinking where we don't allow ourselves to see a fact that should be patently obvious to everybody. All right, I'll keep scrolling down. Nikki says, my Republican religious little sister can't even say Kamala's name. She refers to her as that woman. I mean, that level of disrespect that you always see among the Republicans is something we have to call out. It's like, well, that's disrespectful. And we can make a simple statement. They're going to get mad. It's like, I think that is very disrespectful. You can say her name. My wife is an ELL teacher, and she always insists that the other teachers learn how to pronounce the names of the students. And a lot of them will fight. Well, I'm just not capable of pronouncing that. So no, you have to learn how to pronounce it. Good morning, Gloria. Nikki says, I worked on her campaign here in, and I'm not going to say the name. Or rather, I worked on the campaign for the person running for Democratic Party chair. We lost, but we're the ones who helped get Jasmine here after Brooklyn Duvall wrote her the letter. Awesome. And I appreciate all you wonderful people working in these campaigns. Natasha Kay talks often about her challenges working with the Democratic Party and how she encountered a significant level of racism. And we have to, then you get so many people because of that brainwashing again. They're like, well, we can't be critical of the Democrats because otherwise we're going to get the Republicans. And it's like, look, unless we call out the Democrats on their racism, they're just as bad as the Republicans. And I think we've seen that over and over again. They keep voting. They always get the 4 or 5 Democrats they need to push through some cruel Republican agenda. And we've given the Democrats votes time and time again to stand up for us. They refuse. We have to talk about that. Gloria says it's unconscionable how that works. Yes. Nikki, you have a full recording of her speech. Great. Oh, you like my coffee cup. Yeah, may the force be with you, my Yoda one. Okay, here's Anthony again. We need to be the people holding out our hands when MAGAs wake up. Some are waking up and it is a cult. And when that hold breaks, I think is what he said, it needs to be us that holds out a hand. Compassion, the very thing they lack, is something we need to provide. And that's a good comment. I would say, though, we have to establish that they are sincerely repentant. And I always say, because they want to rush. Somebody wrote me this too. Like, there's people in my family I haven't talked to in a long time. They have to come forward repentant. They have to convince me that they're going to change their cruel ways. That has to be true with MAGA too. We can't skip over that step, because if we just welcome that back in on face value, we end up with a bunch of Kinzingers. Kinzinger is not repentant. Kinzinger is maintaining the MAGA movement. He's pretending he's a resistor. He's pretending he's part of the resistance, but he's not. I love that comment, though, Anthony. I would like to talk about that more. I think it's a complex point. I think my perspective is MAGA is only welcome back once they have gone through narcissistic collapse. Their whole ideology is built up where they demand grievance. They demand to be treated with compassion, even though they're the ones who say, fuck your feelings. That's that bizarro boundaries that they set up again, where they justify themselves. They justify their right to demand things they would not give to anybody else. But yeah, I mean, if they are actually willing and they actually change, I certainly have done things wrong in my life. And I am appreciative of the people who have given me the opportunity to make amends for the things I've done wrong. I appreciate that. But it's more complex than our society recognizes, because the first step is they have to sincerely reject their abusive ideology. And it takes a long time. So I'm going to have to see a lot of humility out of MAGA before I welcome them back in. And we have to vet them, because otherwise we're going to get a bunch of these, It's like they're setting it up where Adam Kinzinger could run as a Democrat or some bullshit, and we don't need that. We don't need him in any office whatsoever because he enabled this. Actually, the entire political population up until this point is an abject failure on both sides of the aisle. Every living president is a failure because they all created this. Look at what we're living through right now. They all had at various times the power to prevent this, and none of them did. And so we need a complete recalibration and rethinking. So I guess I'm, hey, and that's my point of view. And it's like, just, you got to work with me. You got to work with people who disagree with you. I always hit them back with the same lines that they constantly use to pressure me. But we need massive change, massive change. But yeah, I do like that comment, Anthony. Lynn says, why aren't families kept together? How terrifying for parents. Yeah, I mean, because it's an ideology of cruelty and it's an ideology of child abuse. The Republicans are. And we have this assumption, well, they actually care for the country. They make these assumptions that are just flatly invalid. Well, they too, this is what they believe. They believe in cruelty. They believe in abusing kids. That is what they stand for. And we have to start recognizing that. It's like, this is another issue of conflict I have with my dad when he always says, it's like, well, maybe I hurt you, but that wasn't my intention. And it's like, it doesn't matter what your intention was. What matters is the consequence. And within that bizarro boundaries, that ideology set, they think that if something happens, it's an accident and you get hurt, you have a responsibility to forgive them. And I said, no, if I'm around you and every time I'm around you, I end up in pain, that's a choice you're making. It's not like you're the unluckiest person in the world. You're reckless. You're believing things that are causing me to be in pain, and you're living in this moment of denial where you claim that wasn't your intent, yet it keeps happening, and you aren't making any additional steps to stop that pain. So I blame you. And that's what we have to get to. Keep your faith in humanity, love, and empathy are tipping the scales. It's obvious in the polls. People are tired of this cruelty and division. That's true. But I also want to say, whatever happens in the midterms, there's so much to do. We need to get we need to get to that point first where this nation is horrified by the fact that we bombed a school. We're currently not at that point. And we need to go beyond that and get to the point where this nation would be horrified, equally horrified at the idea of building a bomb. Because the only reason you build a bomb is to kill the innocent. That's the only reason. And the fact that we tolerate that, we allow that to go, that shows how corrupt our thinking is. Sue, the vote tabulator compromise. Yeah, that's what this will hold has said that a lot. Yeah. And you saw that in Dallas. There's a lot to be done with voter integrity. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do want to continue to talk about it. I do want to see more lawsuits. I want more accountability. I want more audits, public audits of the elections, and we need to change because that's another one of these cases where we're not allowed to express our concerns. We're not allowed to express our concerns about this. They say we're not the party of vote denial, but we need to have reasonable discussions about whether our elections are safe. And the Republicans constantly talk about rigged elections. They're pushing through the SAVE Act because they claim the elections are rigged. So we have every right, using those arguments, to turn around and say, hey, let's do some recounts of 2024. Nikki says, do not allow him to stop elections in 2028. Well, I'm worried about 2020. Hopefully he'll be long gone by 2028. I'm worried about 2026. I'm worried about the primaries. But Democrats cheated the primaries too. People get really mad when I say that, but it was determined in court that they cheated Bernie Sanders. I've got an article about this. The court ruled that because it's not a government party, that's a private party. Democrats are a private organization, so they're not bound by the same election integrity rules. And it's all started then. Go look up that article. I wrote an article that said Democrats don't rig elections, but they rig primaries, or something about the name of it. It's got to stop because and I've been talking with Emily Berge about it. She's running for Congress in Wisconsin. She said too, the bigwigs in Washington said, we don't want a primary. Primaries are the best way to ensure a good turnout. Democrats are extremely corrupt. We've got to fix it. Yeah. I have a better one than that about my sister. Probably the story I told. Terry says it's misogyny. Yes, learn how to pronounce names. Absolutely. We absolutely have to. Anthony says, totally agree. I'm looking forward to that conversation we're going to have someday, Anthony. MJ says, yeah, there has to be some level of consequence for MAGAs. Yes, they absolutely have to. Forgiveness is nice, but again, It's in that rut. We just push over. What's it? Well, I said I'm sorry. It's like, well, I don't have to forgive you. You can say I'm sorry. You are not entitled to my forgiveness if you have transgressed. That's the other thing. They think they are entitled to a forgiveness. I guess that's an interesting statement there. I don't have to forgive anybody. And also, I can make my forgiveness conditional. I can say, okay, when I am repaired, when you have repaired all the damage you've done, I will forgive you. And they don't want that. They don't want there to be what's it called? I forgot the word. When you're trying to debate things, it's like, no, this is not a negotiation. This isn't a negotiation. You're the one who wants something from me. I'm telling you the price. The price of my forgiveness is reparations. Do they get mad when you say that? I'm gonna have to write that. That's an important price of forgiveness. Reparations. That's a good title for an article. All right, let me keep going here. Extremely complex it is. My specialist, Nikki says, my specialist told me I had no business being out in public and exposed to all the possibilities. I told them, I'm going to take my chances. Keep me some blood on standby in case I need a transmission. Good for you, Nikki. I don't know how I was going to get through it, but I was alive again. And there's no protection and compliance. All we can do is fight. We have to stand for our integrity. If we don't stand for our integrity, if we don't stand for compassion, if we don't speak out against injustices where kids are being raped and exploited and tortured and murdered, well, then we sacrifice our souls. And at this point, too, I guess in life, I feel better because prior to this, and it's like I was always active for decency, but it was always within those kind of boundaries that were part of what established this new cruel reality, and we and you can't blame yourself all the way. Again, when you're 10, and you're 5 and you've got an abusive parent who's subjecting you to torture and cruelty. And you just think that's the world because you literally don't have any experience. You have an internal integrity. There are signs telling you that these things are wrong, but you're trying to be like, okay, this is what I have to work within. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is this recalibration of our thoughts where we've recognized the injustice and the evil of all the things we've been told were true. And give yourself some grace. But once you see things, then you have to act. And we know that last election showed us how corrupt our society is. Yeah. Let me roll down. Yeah, meant 2026. Okay, gotcha. It seems as if the Dems. Yeah, see, now that's interesting because I would say sabotage, but that's also an assumption. That's one possibility. But the other is that they're complicit. They're perfectly happy and they're just as corrupt as the Republicans. And I think we have to allow that. So we can't allow ourselves to be kind of pigeonholed into a certain thinking just because the consequences of some other thoughts are too great and it makes it seem so bad, because I think they are completely complicit. A lot of them. There are some good Democrats. That's the one thing they have going for them. But it's more than half are just as corrupt. That's why I call them blue MAGA. We have to overcome blue MAGA. And that's why Democrats do not want primaries, because they know primaries give we the people the opportunity to put in a whole new set of government. It can be both sides of the aisle. Vote out all the incumbents. Vote in new people. And both the Democrats and the Republicans are reluctant to have primaries. They don't talk about primaries. They don't embrace this idea of letting the people be involved in the democratic process. They don't. And that needs to change. And I get a lot of pressure when I am interviewing candidates who are not the anointed Democratic candidate running for office, because the Democratic establishment doesn't want that. Democratic establishment should be supporting me. They should be supporting this podcast, all the talks I have, because this helps people understand how we make the way. This is the education that our society needs in order to become a more compassionate and healthy community and society. Democrats don't support me. They don't support anyone who speaks like this. That is outside of the realm, because it's outside of the realm of their control. So I keep talking about those bizarro boundaries, those boundaries that are unhealthy boundaries that this current establishment sets to maintain an unjust system. We have to break that down. And that's really and we have to start with ourselves. I mean, it's never, you don't even have to worry like Lisa, maybe it's Lisa, I think but she spells it with a Z. So Lisa Hamline, I'll have to verify how you pronounce her name. I honestly don't know, but I do know that it's spelled with a Z. But she works with the Democratic Party, and she's been saying just wonderful things. How it's the down ballot stuff we have to do, and you know, like the basic levels, the transforms happen there. That's another just one of these magical, wonderful people that is working really hard to make sure good people get elected. But we do. We have to transform our government. Absolutely, we have to transform them. No forgiveness, prosecution. Yep, and absolutely, Nikki, that's really true. The ones that have committed crimes, you know, that Joe, what's his name? The guy who was in charge of ICE in Minneapolis. He thinks he can retire. People should be demonstrating peacefully, but outside his house every day for the rest of his life. Lynn said, I was so confused when 47 was treating blue states differently. Yeah. Why were you confused? That's exactly what I knew he was going to do. Yeah. I knew he was going to do that. He's a cruel monster. Hi, Miranda. Lynette says, we need forensic accountants to find out who is profiting from ICE overpaying for these warehouses. And that's all in plain sight. That's the other thing. It's all pretty obvious. I mean, you can track it down. That guy that they want to make the new, that guy Mullen, I think is his name. They want to appoint him, and you're going to have Democrats voting for it again because they're corrupt. But he owns all these stocks. I mean, they're all publicly traded stocks. I mean, they just have this way of, through corruption, they funnel money to each other because they have no skills. Yeah. Suo, your thoughts on national strikes as vehicle for asserting our people power? It might be inevitable. I mean, we're not going to be able to pay for things soon. I think that's one of the things that you got to read. Where Do We Go From Here by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He talks about it. Our economic power is really where it is. And that's one of the ways that this could actually play out. We don't really know for sure how it's going to play out because we're all kind of blinded by these assumptions we have and what we're indoctrinated to think, those boundaries that we have been lied to and told rule the world, and they don't. Strange things can happen, things that we haven't perceived. So there's just this, it's important to just remember that there are rules beyond what human beings think is their power. There are certain inevitable things, you can't, like they said in Kung Fu Panda, you can't plant a peach seed and have it grow anything other than a peach, So there's certain things, and we are all deliberately confused. They deliberately mislead us and make us forget the things that are true, that are beyond the power of human beings. And I'm working really hard to break down those boundaries and get out of that rut of my thinking that keeps me from seeing the future. And that's kind of the process of this whole newsletter and all the writing and all these talks and all your wonderful comments help me with that. But I mean, there's a couple things like they're trying to rig the elections, but we might be at the point where just nobody, like not even extreme Republicans, vote Republican again, and I don't think they would anticipate that. I think they think their base is going to remain loyal to them. And I mean, we might have a lot of these MAGA folks who aren't repentant, but they vote for a Democrat just because they're pissed off. And that's a problem, actually. It's good for the midterms, but we need a fundamental change of ideology where everybody is united in this belief of protecting kids, which we currently don't have. So to get back to Sue's question, I don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, strikes might happen, but, the guy could just keel over, and then a lot of things will come apart then. There'll be a power vacuum. There are so many things. The whole world is combining now. It's defying him because he's overextended in this war. Everybody hates the war. The whole world hates him. We'll see. Nikki says, I met Talarico, and I got to shake his hand, but I didn't get to hear him speak because someone didn't rent a big enough vehicle for the number of people who showed up to hear him. I'm glad, Nikki. Glad you got to see him. You should have told him to dump James Carville. I really dislike that he has James Carville talking to him. MJ says, do any Democrats ever address why they take so much APEC? See, they don't talk. They should have to explain that to us. And that's really interesting. That's a good point, MJ, because I'll talk to these progressives, and the progressives are the ones that they're asking for money too, but they need it, they need $20. But you can talk to a progressive candidate. Hey, what's your net worth? Are you going to stand against enriching yourself while in office? You can ask these things to the ones that are like running, like regular working class people who are willing to talk to me. The established guys refuse to talk to a person like me. They absolutely refuse. They'll only go on a place like Joe Rogan, which is just offensive, that our Democrats will normalize hate speech like you get on Joe Rogan, and ignorance. He tells nothing but false information. You saw Gavin Newsom had Bannon on his podcast. It's like, well, no support for you ever again. He's willing to talk to Steve Bannon, but he won't talk to me. And I think that should kind of tell you they fear a person like me more than they fear a person like Steve Bannon. Because if we get to this point where we break through this thin membrane of control, we kind of rock people out of that rut in their thinking. And they start to demand more, which is their right, their sacred right to a society, to life and happiness and pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to blame the vaccine on that again. But if we get there, we awaken people. That's why they're so afraid of woke. The woke, if you awaken people, they inherit their power. And we have a lot more power. Slowly, people are seeing it. The first hint, to the end of my days, getting Jimmy Kimmel back on the news, that was the beginning of the end for this administration. Because that was the first time we were reminded, we saw on a national stage, that we the people have power. You start canceling your subscriptions, and you can defy a president. The people have that power. It's just a matter of getting organized. And that's a magical thing. They're trying to change that reality with the advancements in technology, with brainwashing people, with AI, with control of the media. And yet, it remains true that the heart of human beings can rise to the occasion. I do believe that. I don't fully understand how it's going to work. I can't sit here and make a prediction for you, but I guess, and I'm a scientifically minded person, but I have faith because I know that this white supremacy ideology is an ideology of failure and loneliness, and it self-destructs. It eats itself. It's a parasite. So we are going to win. I just don't know how it's going to look. Yeah, they won't talk about it, MJ, and it'd be nice to have some of them on here to answer tough questions. They refuse. Steven says, I'm an independent, not because I sometimes lean red and sometimes lean blue. I don't. I firmly lean left to center. But I can't align myself with a party that continually shows it's only interested in protecting its own existence. Will of the people be damned. I agree with you 100%, Stephen. And that's why my rule is always vote your heart in the primaries and then vote for reason in the general. But we have to get out and go earlier than the primaries even. Get involved in all these other elections. Run for school board. We have to establish a progressive agenda earlier because the white supremacy agenda is installed from the earliest ages. They have all kinds of money. They can pursue these things. We don't have any money, but we have to start taking that task upon ourselves. We have to push back against the cruelty of conservative thinking and Republican thinking. And he says, kick out Schumer and Jeffries. Yeah, and they need to go. They absolutely do. All that APAC money, that needs to go. Really offensive. And then it says, Walter, I'm trying to track it down. Not as easy as you think. What are you trying to track down? Let me know, and I'll see if I can help you. Yeah, Josh Shapiro, he said some things that bother me too. And just, we need some recounts. We have to start threatening recounts in 2024 just to tie up the courts even more. Yes, Nikki, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. started us on the right path. And you read, particularly Dr. Martin Luther King, it shows you. The dystopian novels, I've been getting great comfort from those too, because it just shows you the weakness of authoritarianism. It is weak. It will collapse. It's just offensive that they try to impose it on us. But it's deceitful too. MJ, Schumer and Jeffries work for Israel, not us. And they work for Netanyahu. They work for the genocide that, the corrupt regime that is, misusing its power there, just like we have a corrupt regime here. Lynette, Stephen Etchison, I used to describe myself as such, but the more I educate myself, the more left I am being pushed. And yeah, the Democrats are not a left party. The Democrats are a conservative party. They are even Bernie Sanders is right of center. I wish people would understand that. Yeah, I would like a truly progressive party. We'll get there. Newsom cannot be trusted. I agree. And he's the anointed candidate of the Democrats already. He's got nothing. Anthony says the establishment internal system tells them that the move is center left, but see, the data they look at is fucking wrong. Yeah, and here's the thing I think is funny about that, because they're always like, okay, we have to appeal to moderate Republicans. I said, okay, well, moderate Republicans hate Hillary Clinton. Let's expel her from the party. And they're like, no. And I just think that's funny, because even that's a statement when they're like, appeal to the moderate Republicans. They don't, it doesn't mean what they say it means. They're lying about that. It's another thought terminating cliche. And The people want healthcare. They want this true messaging, like Anthony was saying before. Just speak some facts. I told you my experience from when I was teaching. As a teacher, you're pressured to kind of present what you're told to present. And then I've always had days when I'm just like, you know what, screw this. I'm going to tell these kids the truth. I make that decision and they see the shift in my demeanor and they instantly settle down and listen, just knowing that I've determined within myself that I'm going to tell the truth. And the American public is that way too. Good morning, Derek. Stephen says, Lynette, I'm firmly a democratic socialist in policy, but politically I'm independent. Yeah, I mean, I want free education, universal health care. And then Judith says, I was walking. Oh, I hope you got to listen to this while you were walking. This is kind of the whole point. Get up in the morning and work through some thoughts. Just kind of give you an alternative to oligarch media, I would say, oligarch radio. You can sit and listen to this. And these wonderful comments are great today. You guys are keeping me on my toes. Nikki says, Israel no longer stands for the poor that had to leave Germany, the war criminal Netanyahu. Yeah, and that something has to be done. Something has to be done about that. It's stunning. That situation, it can't be allowed to continue. The genocide has to stop. And I mean, the United States has been too passive in permitting genocide, all in pursuit of wealth. It's horror. It's a horror show. All the things that go on now are horrifying. And they do these horrors, they commit these atrocities, and then they burn all the history books and they teach a sanitized version, the PragerU version of history, like teaching the Patriot as if it's real American history. Those atrocities, but it's like, the lies cannot be escaped. You sense the lie. Even somebody who has no understanding of the truth, they sense the lie. And that's the internal thing that all human beings have. We know when we're being lied to, just like when somebody's looking at you from across the room. And that's what we have to use to guide us. That internal lodestone, which lets you know that corruption is all around and we can do better. And what love is, and that's the thing. Like when you read the dystopian novels, they're always like resigned to their shitty lives. And then they fall in love. And then they're like, okay, this is no longer acceptable. And I'm willing to die rather than continue to endure this. And so I will resist. And that's where we need to be. That's what our mindset needs to be. Oh, Stephen, it says, let's see here. I didn't skip anymore. Okay, Stephen says, I'm currently running for my local school board. In fact, think globally, act locally, polish. Yes. If you want to talk about that, Stephen, let me know. I would be happy to interview you about that. The importance of running for school board. That's where the white supremacists go. They target the school boards. I keep telling you, that's the greatest threat to the well-being and lives and health of our children is white supremacists infiltrating school boards. So let's talk about that sometime, Stephen. I applaud you. Sir, for running for school board. Thank you. Judith says, I can't understand white people that have so much hate for people. Yeah, I want to talk more about that. We should do a talk sometime about that, Judith. What causes that? I've often talked, because I grew up in this conservative rural community where it was against my nature to just hate people. And I never did hate people, but it's like, what gets into you? Because I got out, I went and lived in South America for 10 years. And my first days there were really, I was nervous, but it was because of the things that I'd been indoctrinated to think. And I realized at some point, I'm only nervous because I assume they'll treat me the way people in my community would treat them. It was a long process to shake that off. And all this hate that's programmed into people in the United States, and it makes them lonely. One of the major traits of white supremacy is that loneliness, because they're told they have to win every competition. They have to dominate everybody. They do so, and then they wonder why all the people around them hate them. And they're mad because they were promised to inherit the world if they just dominated all, and all they inherit is a universe of ash. And so it's just this false, futile ideology. And yeah, that's a big question, Judith. I'll talk more and reflect more on that one. Why do white people submit to that? I guess it's because they're looking for a scapegoat because they don't want to examine the flaws in their own thinking that have been the architects of all their misery. So they have to find a scapegoat. I guess that's the simple way to do it. And in the absence of people, of color, They attack people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community, anybody who's different. I mean, I not on the same level, but I endured certain mistreatment just because they called me weird because I was a person who read books. And I think too that's an interesting thing that I've reflected on a lot lately is how scared it makes white supremacists when you are a person who carries classic novels around. I remember that there was a power in just carrying around a classic novel as if they knew that would undermine their ability to indoctrinate you. And so I was just defiantly throughout school reading Dostoevsky and all the great works of literature. I was going through them all just because I knew it pissed them off. All the books that they wanted to ban, I was sitting there reading them. They know where their weaknesses are. They are very, very well aware of their weaknesses. That's why they're so desperate all the time. That's why no fight is too small for them. That's why they'll insist on making people say the Pledge of Allegiance and keeping under God in there, even though that seems trivial, it seems inconsequential, but that's the only thing that they have. And they know that the established trench is a trench that enables white supremacy, so they don't even have to build anymore. They just have to protect. They've got a lead. They're playing with a lead, so they just have to play defense and delay and let time run out. That's what we're up against. All right, MJ, good luck in your run for school board, Stephen. Yes, Stephen, absolutely. I'm so proud of you for doing that. Thank you. Nikki says you're going to gasp when you read my comments on your delightful story about the drive-in theater. I wrote that. I'm trying to remember to write something a little bit more positive every now and then. I went a little sideways on you. That's fine. I appreciate that. I was just trying to tell you I had a good daddy too. I'm happy. I'm so glad there are a shortage of good daddies. I would like there to be more good daddies. I listened. I couldn't say hi from Brooklyn. Okay, good. I'm glad you were listening. I'm a socialist. Yeah, unapologetic. Well, I think democratic socialist is the best word. It's funny how they try to attack the word communist. I mean, I just want my taxpayer money to go to help me instead of make some asshole rich. Why is that so controversial? What do you think about a third party of democratic socialists? I think what we need is a party that will run in areas where Democrats don't even feel the candidate. I think there's an opportunity for that. I mean, there's short-term goals and long-term goals. We have our short-term goal. We have to absolutely win these primaries. That's the first set of elections. We have to get Democratic Socialists in as much as possible in the primaries. Then we want to get Democrats in as much as possible in the general. And in addition to that, building on top of that, more third party. There's the Working Families Party. Get them running, get them some seats at school board, at county level, all these things. Just ensure free and fair elections. All those things are good strategies. The concern is if you have candidates running against each other, you get a Ross Perot situation where he handed the victory, to Clinton because he stole away from the Republican vote. We don't want to do that in reverse, but there's plenty of opportunities to establish a third party. And then just a handful. You don't need to have a majority. If you have like 5 congressmen or women, 5 congresswomen that are Democratic Socialists, they can be the deciding vote on a lot of things. So that's a ton of power. Watch Waj, enjoy Reed from yesterday. Okay, I will. I appreciate his stuff. Leanna says, I was wondering if I don't like to say his name, the orange skid mark was actually an Iranian. He could be. I don't know. He's so foolish. He's so inept. He is the most inept human being ever. I think we should never. It's always like the most basic thing you could think with him. He's just completely without any merit whatsoever. He's without talent. He's just a awful, awful human being, a cruel human being. So never give him the benefit of the doubt. Nothing he says is true. He's not clever. He has no abilities. But he's probably he might be an asset. He's an asset probably to 50 different enemies of the nation that he doesn't even know about because he's just so inept. Judith, it hurts. Yeah. Stephen Edge, I think Mark Parra is trying to connect us. Excellent. Great, Stephen. Fantastic. We'll get on with Nick sometime. I would love that. MJ, I tried doing the home and school association in the fall and was run out by the white supremacist president. Yeah. But don't be results oriented. It's so important. Whether you win or lose, you're in these races. You're saying the things that need to be said. You're doing the good work. So just keep doing that. It doesn't matter if you win the seat. You just have to be there speaking your mind. And that changes a lot of hearts, even if you don't get the win. So don't worry about actually winning. Just participate. Nagy says, most definitely because they want the influence of church in the schools. Yep, and church, one of the defiled branch on the tree of Christianity is white supremacy, and it will kill all the other branches. So the rest of the branches have to stand up, because I keep saying ICE is rounding up Christians. They're all Roman Catholics. ICE is rounding up Christians and putting them in concentration camps. Start saying that. Leanna, it's ingrained in our culture. That's what we're working on. It's hard to see. We're trying to map it out, all the different ways it's ingrained, giving people the tools they have to see it and remove it. We're getting there. Yeah, have reached their glory days and emotional maturity in high school. Isn't that the truth? That's really what we're up against a lot. I mean, yeah, and I mean, we never get to the point where the person who does best on the test is rewarded. It's always, well, we're going to give it to this other guy because we like him better, you know? Just disregarding the results of their inquiries always, because they don't believe in intelligence and rational thinking and critical reasoning. Miranda says, we would have been best friends in high school. Yeah, absolutely, Miranda. That's wonderful. Weirdos got to stick together. Absolutely. Steven says, I was just looking for War and Peace this morning, debating whether or not to order it from my local library, but I have a stack of Abby, Leopold, and McManus to read first. Yeah, I like the books on CD when I go for my walks. I guess it's not CD, the audiobooks. I listen to them as I walk with the dog. And that can be, I'll often be reading these classic books and I have to shut them off because they inspire me to write things and think about new things. But there's so much you can take from those things of the past. I mean, you don't have to sit and be like, okay, I got to do this, the entire War and Peace. If you spent just an hour listening to it, you'd get so much out of it that would inspire you. And if you decide to keep going, great. But if not, you've written the things you need to write. That's good too. So don't, it's intimidating, but don't be intimidated by these big books. Pick them up. Yeah. Give them a chance. Maybe if enough Texans. Yeah. Yeah, the president is just the worst possible person. Nikki says, expressed high concern to Tallarico. He will dump James Carville. I hope he does. Carville has to be, he has to go from the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has to apologize for ever having listened to James Carville. He's a saboteur. He keeps us from winning. Yeah, I didn't get any sleep last night. It's showing. Yeah, I know. And that's the way things have been. That's the way things have been for this year. So I'm at the end of the comments. I appreciate you guys. This has been a good talk. I think it's ongoing. And it's interesting, though, and more I'm seeing, there's just so many different little examples, little bits of clues that we can pick out. They can't burn everything, you know. Even if they burn all the books, scraps of pages would be left with words on those pages. We could pick up those words, and with that, we can rebuild our understanding. So they can't, and you know, and even if the white supremacists erase every science text, you know, there would still be science, and those laws remain, right? Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for being here. So we're gonna win. It's not gonna be in a way that you can anticipate. So don't even sit there wasting energy trying to anticipate or predicting how it's going to be. Just continue to resist. Keep showing up. Keep giving yourself permission to think things that you're indoctrinated not to think. Go ahead and allow yourself. And we had some little disagreements here in these comments, so I appreciate those. And we talk through those disagreements. We don't have to block each other and get all hostile. Too often that's the case. We have to have a coalition. We have to be together. We have to work. And it is true we have to work with people that disagree with us. But often when they say that, it's said in a way that's disingenuous or it defies the meaning. And there is a way that is true. But keep talking. We keep sharing information. Keep holding me accountable. I appreciate all you guys. I don't want to rebuild. I want to reimagine. And that's true. Absolutely. We need to recalibrate our society. We need to demand. But that all starts with allowing ourselves to believe or understand what we need, what should happen. And a good model, like one of the things I said today, it's not enough to have a society where people are mad because bombs are dropped on children. We need a society where people are mad because they waste money building bombs. That's a pretty massive difference in thought. And that's where we have to get to. We have to get to that level. And it's going to require stepping on the toes of white supremacists. And that's going to hurt the white supremacist feelings. And they are actually going to have to go through narcissistic collapse because they are trapped within a bizarro set of boundaries and ideology that makes them deny reality. And it's not our job to placate that by pretending we don't see reality. We have every right to see reality and respond to reality and do what we think is right. If we say something that is a fact and it makes somebody angry, that is on them. That is on them. We don't have to act like it's somehow our fault, that we should censor ourselves and not speak the truth because it hurts the feelings of evil people. We don't have to believe that. And you would be amazed the extent to which that thinking process, that thought process has been indoctrinated, into your own personal ideology. So our first job is purge ourselves of that, and then we become empowered to defeat everything we're up against. Let me read these last couple comments. There's so many people out there with hard copies of literary greats. Books will never completely disappear. I hope not, but a lot of books have, but I'm worried too about the books from people that nobody knows. Because I mean, like I've had some books with some small presses, but there's not a lot of copies of books by me. They can make me disappear fairly easily. And it's at some point I'm going to do it too. I keep track of all the people and all you wonderful people that become supporters of my newsletter. I'm going to keep track of all those names at some date in the future if I'm still around. I keep wondering too. I will honor all those who were sponsors of me now in this hard year. You guys have kept me going. I really appreciate that. Yeah, but it's not that hard. They could erase. I don't know what's going to happen. I kind of got my sights set on the midterms, but already there's the algorithmic erosion here on Substack. So they're deliberately suppressing me. And we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe after the midterms, I'll just have to sleep for 6 months. But I do so appreciate talking to you guys and making this progress. I would like the summary of everything I've learned this year to be available to people in the future. I think it's useful. So we'll continue to go. Nikki says, malignant narcissist is what? Yeah, I think so. He suffers from Cat. Yeah, I've talked with Cat a lot. That's been mentioned. If we make white supremacists angry, then we're doing something right. Very good. Absolutely. Yeah. Just hold them accountable. And we don't even have to be mean. Just say straight up, just point out like I did with my dad. Well, it's pretty clear there's a problem in your family. Everybody in your family is divorced. In my mom's family, that's not the case. Seems like there's some issue there's some thread. He got so mad. Pay it forward like you're doing. Yep, that's what we do. All right, I'm going to leave it for now. I got to rest. I'll be talking with Nick Paro in 40 minutes at 10 o'clock. I think we have a nice thank you, Nikki, for restacking and sharing. That's so helpful. Thank you, Gloria. We appreciate you. I appreciate you very much. And just having these opportunities to walk through these thoughts, empower ourselves to think the thoughts of freedom, folks. Demand decency and give yourself an opportunity to have prosperity and love and affection and compassion. We do have such a wonderful community here and all these familiar names. I appreciate you guys so much. Hello, Erna. I am just kind of wrapping up, and I'm glad you made it for a minute. So it's good that you're here. I am not going to be here tomorrow or Thursday because I'm doing a couple days in the water park with the kids just to rest, but I'll be back probably on Friday. So stay strong, keep resisting. Thank you guys so much. Love you all. Appreciate you all. We'll talk to you again soon. And empower yourself. Feel empowered. Thank you, Judith. And we're all in this together, and we are going to win. And our job right now is to just limit the amount of abuse that they're allowed to do and save as many as possible. But never quit. Never give up. We're getting back. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you. Yes. We'll talk to you soon, Stephen.